Have you ever imagined that a simple person, dressed in plain clothes, could shake an entire world built on glitz, glamour, and deep-rooted prejudice? Picture this. A woman is turned away at the doors of a luxurious hotel. Not because she lacked ability, but simply because she didn't look the part. Yet that very night, the same woman transformed humiliation into power, silence into a voice that moved millions. She wasn't after revenge. She was after something far greater, exposing the quiet injustice that still lingers around us. Her journey is living proof that no matter who you are, the moment you stand up for the truth, the whole world will have no choice but to listen. And today, I invite you to immerse yourself in this story. Don't take your eyes off the screen, because what you're about to witness isn't just a shocking event. It's a spark of inspiration that might just change your life. Have you ever wondered, how many doors have slammed shut on people simply because they didn't meet some superficial standard? How many dreams were extinguished right at the doorstep of glittering worlds, just because someone decided you weren't worthy, based on the clothes you wore, the shoes on your feet, or the simplicity of your presence? Tonight, you'll witness a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about appearances, about status, and about the silent power games played behind gilded doors. The Crown Imperial Hotel glowed in all its grandeur beneath Manhattan's fiery sunset. Its white marble facade reflected light like a fortress of power, completely detached from the ordinary world. This wasn't just a hotel. It was a sanctuary of the elite, where billionaires, royals, and those who shaped the fate of nations came to be treated like gods among mortals. And stepping into it was Victoria Adams. But she wasn't clad in glamorous gowns or dripping in diamonds. Instead, she wore a soft gray cashmere sweater, crisp white jeans, and a single striking detail, a sapphire brooch that sparkled under the fading light. But that brooch wasn't just for show. Hidden inside was a micro camera, silently capturing every glance, every raised eyebrow, every seemingly harmless gesture loaded with quiet judgment. Victoria walked steadily, her steps measured and calm, even as her heart pounded with fiery purpose. 3 years of preparation, 3 years of data collection, all leading to this moment. Around her, the world moved like a perfectly orchestrated performance. Bellhops in spotless uniforms carefully carried suitcases worth more than a year's salary for the average worker. Receptionists smiled with polished grace, bowing to guests draped in fame and fortune like invisible cloaks of superiority. To them, Victoria was invisible, too plain, too modest, too easy to overlook. And that was exactly what she wanted. Day one of the final experiment, she whispered into the tiny mic sewn into her jacket lapel. Target, Crown Imperial Hotel. Objective, expose the invisible lines between status and appearance. The brooch's camera began recording every detail in razor-sharp clarity. The scrutinizing glances, the stiffness in mannerisms now second nature to those working behind the desk. Victoria smiled fondly. They had no idea. They were unknowingly becoming characters in a silent revolution she had been quietly building. A revolution poised to shatter every prejudice about what gives a person their worth. Let's begin, she thought, stepping toward the front desk, where the gateway to opulence was about to either swing open or slam shut. The grand lobby of the Crown Imperial glittered with crystal lights, stretching wide like a ceremonial runway made to welcome the proud footsteps of the elite. But to Victoria, it felt like a cold, invisible wall, sharp and unyielding, that kept her on the outside of this dazzling world. As she approached the front desk, the staff's eyes swept over her in a calculated assessment, professional smiles still frozen on their faces. The first to speak was Isabelle Laurent, the front desk manager. She was perfectly groomed, with a polished smile that was icy to the core. "How may I assist you, ma'am?" Isabelle said sweetly, her tone dipped in condescension masked as courtesy. Victoria calmly placed a black credit card on the counter, its platinum logo gleaming, an unmistakable emblem of the upper echelon. "I'd like to book the finest available suite," she said clearly, her gaze composed yet resolute. Isabel's eyes darted to Victoria's light gray cashmere sweater and crisp white jeans. Her lips curled into a thin, dismissive smile. "I'm afraid our booking system is currently down. We're fully booked at the moment," Isabel replied, voice even but chilling. Victoria responded gently, unwavering. "That's interesting. Just minutes before I walked in, your online system still listed 3 vacant suites." Isabel tilted her head slightly, her smile now painfully forced. "There must have been an update," she murmured, just loud enough for her colleagues to hear. "Looking that casual." At that moment, Richard Beaumont, the Crown Imperial's senior manager, appeared. His custom-tailored suit and icy demeanor only intensified the stifling atmosphere. "What's the matter, Isabel?" he asked, his gaze slicing through Victoria's modest attire like a scalpel. "We're informing this guest that there are no available suites, Mr. Beaumont," Isabel replied coolly. Richard gave a slight nod, his eyes sharp and calculated. "There must be a misunderstanding regarding our standards," he said. "At Crown Imperial, we maintain the highest expectations for our clientele." Hidden inside Victoria's sapphire brooch, the micro camera recorded every glance, every word, every razor-thin moment of discrimination, veiled but unmistakable. Victoria held her head high, eyes steady and fearless. "Thank you for clarifying the hotel's policies," she said, her tone calm but laced with quiet meaning. As she turned and walked away, she knew she had captured everything she needed, irrefutable evidence of a brutal, unspoken truth. What the staff at Crown Imperial didn't realize was that they had just made themselves the central characters in a documentary soon to shake the entire world of luxury hospitality. Just as Victoria turned to leave, the grand lobby door echoed shut behind her, lunging the space into a heavy silence. And in that suffocating moment, a commanding voice rang out, crisp and undeniable. "Hold on. Just because this woman looks modest, you've decided she's unworthy of being served?" Heads turned in unison. Every gaze snapped toward the source of the voice, a tall, silver-haired man in a perfectly tailored suit. His hair was impeccably groomed, and the chandelier light danced across the mother-of-pearl buttons of his jacket, only adding to the weight of his presence. It was Henry Ellington, chief executive of a global real estate empire and a major shareholder of the Crown Imperial. He wasn't just influential. He held the final word on every strategic decision the hotel made. Isabel and Richard froze, their faces visibly pale. Their eyes darted to each other, as if seeking an escape, but all they saw reflected in one another's eyes was panic. "Mr. Ellington, sir, there must be a misunderstanding," Richard stammered, his once steady voice starting to tremble. But Henry's eyes cut straight through them. His tone wasn't loud, but the authority in it stopped the entire room cold. "I've been coming to the Crown Imperial for over 20 years, he said, "and never, not once, have I seen a policy that dictated attire or appearance. Will we judge our guests by wealth? Fame? No, it should be character and human worth." Victoria stood silently, watching the confrontation unfold. She hadn't anticipated this. The presence of someone as powerful as Henry Ellington stepping in on her behalf sent a wave of awe through her chest. Her heart pounded because she could feel it. Everything was shifting in a way she never dared to hope. "We were just trying to preserve the exclusive atmosphere of the Crown Imperial," Isabel muttered, panic flickering in her eyes. Her hands clutched the reservation sheet as if it could shield her. "Exclusive?" Henry raised an eyebrow, his gaze slicing deeper. "This so-called exclusivity you speak of, is it a barrier not based on character or credentials, but on appearance? And who gave you the right to make that judgment?" The air thickened around Isabel and Richard. Both lowered their heads, no longer able to hide behind policy or politeness. Beads of sweat formed on their temples, glistening under the crystal light. Henry stepped forward, each of his footsteps echoing powerfully against the marble floor. He stopped in front of Victoria, meeting her eyes with sharp clarity and profound respect. "Ma'am, the Crown Imperial is meant to be a home for those who are worthy, and I believe you are exactly that. Allow me to stand beside you, not just today, but in changing this forever." Victoria looked into his eyes, feeling the sincerity behind every word. A fire lit within her, fiercer than ever. "Yes, Mr. Ellington, let's open that door. Not just for me, but for everyone who's ever been turned away. For everyone who's ever been dismissed because of how they looked." A breathless stillness swept over the Crown Imperial. The receptionists, the onlookers, the guests. No one dared move, as if afraid they might disrupt this defining moment. Inside her sapphire brooch, the camera continued to record, silently capturing every glance, every furrowed brow, every flicker of fear and hope, etched permanently into history. The final image captured was one that would mark a turning point. The Crown Imperial, long considered a symbol of unshakable luxury and pride, had just revealed its first crack, and those cracks soon enough would spread, shaking the very foundations of a kingdom built on bias and pretense. Back in her modest yet battle-ready apartment, Victoria stood silently, eyes scanning a wall covered in photos and diagrams from her campaign. These weren't just images of luxury hotels or guests being turned away. They were connective threads, building a case strong enough to bring down the towering wall of prejudice. Beside her, Henry Ellington traced his finger across a map of locations. His voice, though as commanding as ever, now carried a surge of fire and urgency. "Victoria," he said, "we're not just calling out an incident. We're calling out an entire system. Tonight we stop being witnesses. We become the exposers." Victoria nodded, eyes alight with an unshakable resolve. "Everything is in place. Emma is managing all the live stream channels. Marcus has discreetly planted cameras throughout the entire hotel. Even the smallest gesture will be captured." Her voice was firm, certain. Henry smiled, a rare, warm flicker in his gaze. The look of a mentor watching his protege rise beyond expectation. "Tonight," he said, "the game changes. The CEOs will attend this prestigious gala, but they have no idea that this gala will become a stage for truth." Victoria pointed to the seating map of the event. Every major player in hospitality, luxury service, and media had their names boldly marked in red. "They will all witness this together," she declared, "not just to be asked questions, but to be held accountable before the world." She and Henry exchanged a decisive nod. The battle was already scripted. Every move that would follow had been meticulously planned. Cameras had been carefully hidden in the flower arrangements, beneath name plaques, even beneath the fine porcelain plates. Footage from multiple angles. Audio so sharp it could capture every breath, every whisper. Everything was ready for a night the world would never forget. The game had truly begun. Outside the Crown Imperial, glittering chandeliers bathed the prestigious gala entrance in golden light. A parade of luxury cars lined the valet circle, setting the stage for a night ruled by prestige and power. One by one, industry giants stepped onto the red carpet, CEOs, hospitality moguls, and the decision-makers of the elite. And into that dazzling world stepped Victoria, still clad in her light gray cashmere sweater and pristine white jeans. Beside her, Henry Ellington walked confidently, his gaze sweeping the scene like an architect laying the foundation of a new empire. Heads turned. Whispers rippled across the grand lobby. Why was a woman dressed so modestly being escorted by Henry Ellington himself? Speculation danced in the air like static before a storm. From a nearby surveillance van, Emma's voice crackled through the earpiece. "All camera feeds are live. Angles are set. Just waiting on your signal." Victoria closed her eyes, letting the murmur of the gala fill her chest. She drew a deep breath. History was about to strip the gloss off luxury's gleaming surface. "Go live," she said softly, sealing the final moment of preparation. Suddenly, the grand LED screen at the center of the hall flickered to life. On it, footage played of the very moment at the Crown Imperial when Isabel's voice dripped with disdain, judging Victoria's outfit. The sound echoed through the opulent space. "Looking that casual, Gasps erupted. Guests glanced at one another, faces frozen in confusion, disbelief, and dawning realization. Henry Ellington stepped onto the stage, his voice calm, deliberate, like a conductor guiding an orchestra of truth. Ladies and gentlemen, what you just saw is not fiction. It is reality, and it's happening right here in our industry. Then came Victoria, stepping forward to face the room. Cameras captured her from every angle, streaming live to millions watching from around the world. "We've overlooked human worth for far too long," she began. Her voice wasn't loud, but each word landed with the weight of conviction, reverberating through the hall. "I didn't come here seeking privilege. I came seeking justice for all of us who've ever been judged by appearances." A moment of stillness. Then applause broke out. At first scattered, then it spread like a wildfire across the room. And far beyond the ballroom walls, millions of live-stream viewers sat upright in stunned silence, eyes wide, as a buried truth came crashing to light. Tonight, the Crown Imperial was no longer just a hotel. Tonight, it became a symbol of transformation. The ballroom was frozen, like a surge of electricity had just torn through a crowd who once blindly worshipped everything the Crown Imperial represented. A thick silence blanketed the gala, as if even the air itself had stopped moving, stunned by the raw truth now unraveling before them. Henry Ellington turned to Victoria, his eyes offering silent encouragement, pushing her forward. She stepped to the center of the stage, now standing directly before the faces of industry titans, the executives, the leaders of global hospitality. Spotlights fell on her, and her gray cashmere sweater and white jeans, once overlooked, now stood as symbols of a revolution demanding justice. Her voice rang out, calm but commanding. "Tonight, we are not here for a gala. We are here to confront a truth we've ignored for far too long." Murmurs rippled through the crowd, but Victoria didn't waver. She turned, facing the live-stream camera broadcasting to millions around the world. "I was denied because of my clothes, because of my appearance. My true worth as a human being was dismissed. I've heard all the polite lies. We're fully booked. Your attire doesn't meet the dress code. But let's be honest, those were just excuses." She pointed to the massive LED screen behind her, where still images now froze the moment Crown Imperial staff subtly, meticulously disregarded her, frame by frame. Then Henry Ellington stepped forward, his voice majestic and thunderous. Crown Imperial made a choice. It was the wrong one. What we are seeing tonight is not the fault of one person. It is the result of a systemic failure. Whispers turned into gasps. The once stoic faces of executives now showed signs of discomfort, shame creeping into their polished expressions. Victoria took one final step forward, her closing blow. "Today, we place the Crown Imperial in the spotlight of transparency. There is no hiding anymore. The question is no longer who is wrong. It's who will stand up and do what's right." The camera zoomed in on the faces of CEOs. Their eyes reveal a cascade of emotions: disbelief, fear, and a reckoning with their own conscience. Outside the hall, millions of live-stream viewers erupted with passion. They weren't just spectators. They had become part of the revolution. And inside the ballroom, under the searing light of justice, one truth rang clear. The Crown Imperial would never be the same again. At first, the applause came slowly, hesitant and scattered. But then, like a line of dominoes tumbling in perfect sequence, a thunderous wave of clapping erupted across the ballroom. The heavy atmosphere shattered, replaced by a powerful surge of uncontainable support. Distinguished guests, many of whom had once remained silent or turned away in the face of injustice, were now rising to their feet. They were no longer passive spectators. They were becoming part of this historic moment, helping push the wheels of change forward with their own hands. Henry Ellington offered a soft smile, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction as the domino effect spread like wildfire. He turned to Victoria, nodding, a silent acknowledgement of what she had just set in motion. From a control van, Emma's voice crackled through the earpiece. "The live stream is exploding. Over 8 million people are watching live. Hashtags about crown, imperial, injustice, and hospitality are trending #1 worldwide. Victoria inhaled deeply, feeling the tidal wave of energy rushing toward her from every direction. She stepped forward, facing the now electrified crowd. "This isn't just my story," she said, her voice firm, yet full of emotion. "This is our story. The story of everyone who's ever been judged by their appearance, rejected unfairly, told they weren't good enough. Tonight, we are silent no more. Tonight, we rise for ourselves and for each other." The ballroom shook with a roar of applause, like thunder breaking free. Even the executives, once composed and untouchable, couldn't remain seated. One by one, they rose. Some made their way to the stage. One of them, a CEO of a major hotel group, took the microphone. "I admit it," he said. "We were wrong. We let bias dictate our decisions for far too long. But starting today, that ends." Cheers exploded across the hall. The audience erupted, demanding justice, demanding change. Henry stepped beside Victoria, his voice low but unwavering. "Justice doesn't end here, Victoria. This is only the beginning. We'll take this wave farther, across borders, across industries, so that justice is no longer a slogan, but a living, breathing reality." Victoria nodded, her eyes glowing with fierce belief. She knew this wasn't about one night. This was about an entire generation. And beyond the ballroom, on every social media platform, millions were already carrying the message forward. Photos, clips, declarations for change, shared at lightning speed. The domino effect had begun. And now, nothing could stop it. 3 months after that historic gala night, the name Crown Imperial was no longer synonymous with arrogance and discrimination. Instead, it had become a living symbol of renewal and justice. Victoria walked slowly through the grand lobby of the Crown Imperial, a place that had once rejected her simply because of how she looked. Now, the walls proudly displayed portraits of every employee, from top executives to housekeepers. Each face beamed with pride, and beneath each photo was a line etched in bold. "Here, every person is respected." Henry Ellington, now serving as chairman of the board, stood waiting at the far end of the lobby. He greeted her with a warm smile. "Victoria, we've gone farther than I ever imagined," he said. "But I know this still isn't the final destination." Victoria nodded, her eyes glowing with unwavering conviction. "We've only just begun, Henry. We've changed the hotel. But out there is a whole world still waiting to be awakened." Just then, Emma and Marcus arrived from down the hallway, holding the latest reports. Emma, visibly excited, announced, "The Borderless Guest initiative has now been adopted by over 20 major hotel chains worldwide. Even some airports and airlines are beginning to roll out fair evaluation policies." Marcus added, his face lit with joy. "And the best part, yesterday, a young boy who was once turned away from a fine dining restaurant for wearing a plain t-shirt. He was officially invited back, not just as a guest, but as the face of our campaign." Laughter bubbled gently through the hopeful air. Victoria clutched the small notebook she always carried, the one that held her journey, from the very first rejection to the night the world changed. "Every small change is a giant leap," she whispered, not just to herself, but to everyone following this journey. The final shot lingered on the entrance of the Crown Imperial, where a new plaque shimmered in the early morning light. "Welcome, whoever you are." Outside, the sunlight pierced through the crystal glass, scattering into hundreds of radiant beams, like a heartfelt invitation to a future free of prejudice and injustice. A powerful, open-ended conclusion, leaving audiences with one undeniable truth. Real change doesn't happen overnight, but every courageous step forward opens a new door. For justice, for dignity, and for humanity. You just walked with me through an extraordinary journey, from cold rejection to a tidal wave of awakening that shook the world. But this isn't just Victoria's victory. It's a triumph for the millions who've ever been underestimated, boxed in by shallow judgment, or dismissed for not fitting the mold. If this story stirred something deep in your heart, Please leave a message in the comments. Share your honest thoughts so we can spread the truth that human dignity should never be measured by appearance or status. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications because I promise you, there's so many more stories like this still waiting to be told. Be part of this movement. Be the one who lights the torch of justice so that tomorrow's world is kinder, fairer, and more human than today. And remember this, real change begins with the courage inside each of us right now. In this story, we learn a profound truth. A person's worth should never be judged by how they look or where they come from. This modest woman wasn't rejected because she lacked talent or dignity. She was rejected simply for not dressing the way they expected. But here's what made her extraordinary. She didn't choose silence. She didn't choose bitterness. She stood up. She turned pain into purpose, and silence into a tidal wave that swept through an elite industry and woke millions. She showed us that all it takes is one person brave enough to stand for what's right, and doors of change will swing open for all. The message here is clear. The world will stay closed if we continue to accept unfair standards. Everyone deserves respect, no matter what they wear, where they come from, or how they look. Don't let someone's narrow gaze dim the light inside you. You have every power to be the spark that ignites a path toward justice and compassion in this world. I was personally moved by telling this story because this isn't just about the hospitality industry. It's about all of us, about the times we've been judged by how we look, the moments we were overlooked, the times we felt like we just weren't enough. But like Victoria, if we choose to face it instead of staying silent, if we dare to turn our pain into purpose, we can ignite a flame of change more powerful than we ever imagined. Change doesn't begin with grand gestures. It begins with the smallest acts. A word, a kind gesture, a moment of courage. If this story touched you, please share your thoughts below. Like the video, subscribe to Toch Story, and turn on the bell icon so you won't miss the next emotional journey we take you on. Because we're just getting started, and together, we'll keep sharing stories of empathy, justice, and the quiet strength that lives in all of us. And always remember, don't wait for the world to change. Be the one who lights the first flame.